Good afternoon, Peggy Tiderman. Please welcome to the RPM studios. And it's great to have you in the studio today.
Well, thank you. Good afternoon to you as well. It's a pleasure to be here.
Peggy, your list of things that you've done in the last 5-6 years is pretty commendable. And I certainly want to cover all those things. And one of the things I would really like to do today is kind of get a fix on who is Peggy Tiderman.
Well, particularly when you look at the last 6 years, I am someone who has totally evolved into a different chapter of my life, I can tell you. About 6 years ago, my husband came down with, unfortunately, inoperable, incurable cancer, and we were notified of that, and within 10 months, he passed on after keeping him with us in the family at home for that duration. It was a life-changing experience for me and my 2 children and their spouses and my grandchildren that was forever changing for us, for someone who had never been in the hospital a day in his life, and waking up one day and realizing that life would never be the same again after almost 36 years of marriage. So it has changed.
So you're a mother of 2?
That is correct.
How old were your children?
At that particular time,
Yes.
My daughter was 34 and my son was 32.
So you're entering into the what people call the third phase or the twilight phase of your life, feeling like so many great things have happened in your life.
Absolutely.
And yet there was so many other plans God had for you that you had no idea of. Going back through that, who was Peggy Tiderman before 6 years or 5 years ago?
Well, I definitely was someone who was a faith-based person from my early 20s. I had accepted Jesus Christ as my Lord and Savior and thought, my journey of raising my kids, getting married, raising my kids, and I did start to work early on. So I've been in the professional business world for over 35 years, and with opportunities to be in managerial and ownership roles of companies and organizations. And so I was very active as a parent. I was one of their coaches. I was a mother who worked with multiple different schedules to be there for them, and a spouse supporting my husband in his journey, and doing the things that most families do on a regular basis in this day and age.
You were a life coach in training.
Life coach, that's exactly right. That's the best way to put it. And was always involved with the kids, no matter what they were doing, and always involved with the journey of an organization I had the privilege to start with back in 1985, and my kids were 5 and 3 at that time, and that really sort of gave me the opportunity to learn about life, working with a school and an organization of multiple people in different lives.
So you go through this tragedy of losing your husband. Obviously, I can tell just by looking in your eyes and the pain that's still there somewhat of that loss. And obviously someone that has lost a good friend and not only a husband and a father. During those hard times, what were you thinking?
Well, if I told you everything I was thinking...
We don't have time for that. We will need a whole year of these episodes, correct?
That is correct. And some of them, as in any situation that's that challenging, we think we're prepared for life. But when something like that hits you in your mid-50s, when you are at the prime, as you said, as to what you believe is what you're supposed to be living, working hard and doing, and you get hit with that. Very faith-based, without Jesus as my rock and Jesus as our rock. When we started down that journey back in 2013, my son, who is the one who gave it the title, The Journey of Trust. And when you put that statement out there early on in a journey where you really don't know where it's going to go, and you make that commitment, that's a game changer to the way you choose to live life. Because when you allow God to be the person in control and to submit to his will, to say, I trust you, Lord, you truly do have to embrace different feelings in a way that you would never have embraced them before. And I can say that that's probably how we were able to do that. I know that's how we were able to do that.
Your son Mark is
Yes.
also in the same type of um, career, but on a
Hmm.
different spectrum. And we're going to talk a little bit about that
Hmm.
later. But was that one of the reasons he ventured on that part of the journey because of losing his father and the, the journey of trust?
No, he actually, back in when he was 18 years old, had the opportunity to go to Mexico City and participated in a mission trip in the garbage dumps of Mexico City. And I actually went as a person to visit on a trip, but he became an intern. And then eventually he actually met his wife that he's been married to for over 14 years down there, and they became the leaders in Mexico. So he gave his life to Christ early on and was very committed to just living a life of faith. And I think when that happened, he, at a young age, at 32 years old, truly was in a very good spot for me as a mother in needing her son at that time, as well as my daughter. But he, in particular, definitely, that was life changing for him to know that journey of trust. And we became accountability partners actually throughout the journey, because there were times that he, as anyone does, God, why are we going this way? We didn't plan. And
Sure.
I would remind him, we're on a journey of trust. And he would say, thank you, Mom. Thank you for that reminder. So he started early on in some different tracks and paths.
Several different of your articles are pretty much proclaiming to, if you need something, reach out. People are there to help you.
Yes.
It obviously is written from a person that has experience from asking to be helped. Or what were some of those instances that perhaps you did or felt that you needed help? And obviously you're going through this very tough time, and now I'm kind of talking about the formulation of looking back, and now you're seeing those experiences, and which, 8 years, 9 years down the road, you're looking at this saying, okay, I'm writing about these experiences. I'm writing to help other people.
Mm-hmm.
Let's go back to those times where in your writings it's obvious that you've visited those places mentally or perhaps physically as well.
Sure. From an early age, I was very blessed and fortunate to be surrounded by various different mentors and leaders in the business development of the organizations that I was a part owner in, and then also executive director, and then a journey working for some other corporate American companies along the way. And when you allow yourself to embrace individuals for what their expertise is, and conversationally can have great relationships, which is what I believe in leadership and individuals. It's all about the relationship. When you build relationships with people, they're the ones who are the vessels for you. And I think it is interesting that you bring that up, because I know when we walked that journey that year, I say, the Lord prepared me to walk that journey the way I
That year
did.
after your husband died?
The journey
of the death.
Because for years I had been in charge of running organizations. I was responsible for being the one to step up, and had been, brought about by mentors that helped me to know how to step up. And that year I said to myself, I am confident that without all of that, the previous 25 years of having to be the one in charge, having to be in very stressful, critical, last-minute decision-making situations, that I probably would not have been positioned to be the leader of the family in the way that I had to be for my children and my husband and everybody else, because of what was taking place. But I know that the path, that while I didn't want it, and I remember saying a few times in my career, when I walked the journey on a 5-year track, if I'd have read the book before I walked the journey, I would have said, "Don't take me, Lord." And on the backside of it said, "Wow, there's no way that I could have gotten to where I'm at today for appreciation of life, people, a faith, and just knowing and trust that surpasses understanding, and peace that surpasses understanding when you truly give it up." And I do believe that we do create our own drama. And I remember saying that to myself in that journey of those 13, that 10 months, on that journey of saying, if we keep our focus, keep our peace, keep our compass in the right spot, the drama is minimal.
Would you say that that's a definition of yours of the word faith?
Yes, yes. I mean, it truly is. It's whenever I try to push him over and say, "I'm driving, Lord," and he reminds me, "No, I remember I'm driving," and it's those wake-up calls that when the quicker I release that and give it back, the faster I find my life getting back on track, and that's the greatest, I think, experience and knowledge of return that I've gained over the years to say, "Oh, you've got this." And I need to follow. And as I say with every leader, every great leader is a great follower. And if I'm a follower, I'm following Christ. I'm following him where he wants me to go and where he's leading me. And he certainly was leading us that year when we would let him. And when we would try to take control, it's when things did get a little bit more emotional and more difficult from a standpoint of not the trust. And when we went back to that trust and went back to that faith, absolutely, that rock. I tell people, Jesus is my rock, I'm one step away from depression. I'm one step away from, many different decisions in my life that I would make differently, but I bring it back to that. And once once I get recalibrated, I go, okay, now I know where I'm at again.
I think it's interesting that you're able to say that. I think that's some of the message I get in your readings and things that you've written, that your ability to say, hey, look, we're all vulnerable at various times. Mm-hmm. And again, your writings come from a place of experience. There's no doubt. I mean, you're not teaching people how to cook because you read the recipe, right?
Yes. Yes.
So, in that way, in those dark moments that we all have, mm-hmm. what do you feel is some of the most important things that you illuminate in the way you live, in the way you talk, in the way you coach, in the way you mother your children and people around you?
I think you said it there, and one of the words is vulnerable. The first thing you have to do is to be vulnerable, to know that we are all susceptible and can have those dark moments. And it's all about expectations in life, and I teach this in leadership. When you have expectations of what you want to accomplish, you are more likely to achieve that outcome. And the same thing with me and my expectations and my vulnerability of when I really focus on the expectation that Christ is all I really need in those moments, instead of trying to be it myself, he brings to light the things I need to know. And the refining takes place. Believe me, I'm being refined on a regular basis. And there are moments whenever it's been more difficult than others. And, I really did believe for, my early 20s and going into my 50s, I thought, no, I've got this. I know how to be a Christian. I know how to walk this walk. I didn't. It was
Do we ever? I mean,
really?
I think one of the most beautiful things you just said was that you're constantly refining. You're that beautiful stone underneath the waterfall that's being rubbed every day and polished, and the glistening of the new you keeps coming through. What is your feeling about hope?
That's a very good question, because I know when you go through a journey like we went through, where you're given the very specific details of the likelihood of what is to happen, and you know that you have hope that is beyond all hope. Hope is not that I can change the outcome. Hope is that I can partner with the destination, to me, in my experience. Because whenever you try to change the outcome, that's whenever I try to be all that I believe I am, when I know that I am not, that he is all that he is. And the hope is knowing that he will never let me down. in what he knows what is right for me. And that is what I've learned in that journey, which was a very hard, I guess, lesson to learn, because we all want to believe that our hope can be what we determine that outcome should be, when in essence, when we truly give it up to him and we embrace, and it is submission to what his will is, the hope changes. And that's the hope changed in both my husband's and my life in that journey. Absolutely.
So it's often written that without hope there is no love. And in talking about all the things you were defining as hope in your life, tell me how your appreciation for love, and I mean love in relationships, love in for the Lord, love in those type of things, all changed through this trying time of hope. Because they do say, your defining moments are found in the dark hours of your life. And so tell us a little bit about that part of your life now, and the way you see hope, you project hope, and how that translates to love.
That's a really great question, because I can tell you that probably is the one thing that's changed the most dramatically in me in the last 6 years. And it is because of that. When you go through, as you said, one of those dark times, whenever you're walking a journey like that with someone, and you realize that every day is precious. And that's, I tell people all the time, while that was the most difficult 10 months of our marriage, it was probably the best 10 months of our marriage. And that's because I was able to look at life, and I know my husband did differently, from a different perspective of there is really a timetable on this. And what I walked away with from that journey is I don't know whatever timetable there will ever be in life. And I think God intends it to be that way. So every experience, every opportunity, every person that I get to meet is just a gift. They're God's children. I don't care who they are. I've learned every individual is a precious gift. And living in the moment, I never want to lose that particular essence of life. And I totally, for myself, I look at every situation from a privilege standpoint. So the love has just grown more from my ability to look at people differently than I've ever looked at them before, not just my family members and people that are naturally in a love circle, but every individual. I mean, I serve on a commission in Washington, D.C., and the people I've met over the last 7 or 8 years have become some of the best, co-workers and partners in ways from all over the world. And I visit schools all over the country, and I have individuals who are clients all over the country. And I go into every relationship giving it every bit that I have. And I found that that's what, people are looking for today in life. And if that's what that journey taught me, then that is where the refining that God has put me through has placed me to be more a Christ follower and walk more like Christ every day.
Your journey of change. Most people, we get very comfortable in our 50s and 60s. Mm-hmm. And you're a gleaming example of how beautiful change can be and the need for change.
Yes.
Because in all of us, we find that our life's going to change. Mm-hmm. Our life has been designed to change, right? I mean, our health diminishes. Yeah. Things just change around us because the world is ever changing. So we've talked about the faith and hope that's required, that obviously is an inspiration to many in the way you speak and the things you speak about. But I also see this big charitable heart in you. And I like to say charity is best described as God above all things.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
And when I'm reading your bios, when I'm listening to things you're talking about, when I'm reading the writings that you've written, you exhibit that ability to give while maintaining a posture of knowing that there's nothing else more important.
Mm-hmm.
Tell us a little bit about that.
Well, I believe that in my journey, I've always been an individual who has always believed that every person, an individual, has value, which is part of what I teach in leadership. It's creating that essence that someone feels valued. And because of that, I always felt that along the journey. And I think value does bring something to us in a way that makes it more special for us to appreciate the importance of who we are, what we do, and what we bring. I can tell you the last 6 years in particular, from charitable perspective, they teach you that when you are down and when you are out, the most important thing you can do is to give to someone else and to do something for someone else. And when I was, shortly after, when my husband passed away, and that's what happens in life, when that takes place, life goes back to, quote, normal, what people call normal. But in your world, it never goes back to normal.
Normal changes, right?
Normal changes.
Right?
I remember reading a very good statement that when you lose a spouse, you lose the present. And when you lose a parent, you lose the past. When you lose a child, you lose the future. But when you lose a spouse,
That's beautiful.
You lose the present. So my present was gone. And when you look at that from that perspective, you only can begin to say that I really just need to be giving back here, because we never know when that present is going to be gone for any individual. And being charitable is just something that has shown me that if I can only give half of what I've gotten in return from all of my charitable opportunities, whether it's the passion for education and serving on an accrediting body, or just working with individuals within an organization and just offering up to help an organization that's struggling or just wanting to get started. I remember when we first decided and looked at changing this, I wasn't really interested in what was going to be the income, because at that point in my life I was okay, and I was like, I'm not interested in that. Well, I'm a realist to know that you have to be, prepared to know that financially you do have to have compensation and financial stability in any business good, transaction.
My father used to always say, dreams are dreams, but you better know how to finance them to make them come true.
Absolutely. So that was part of it. But yes, I mean, it's just, there is nothing more important. And if, truly, we are more alike than we are different as individuals. And if we truly would just focus on those key areas that really touch each of us, and I find that it's about the people. That's why I tell people, what is there that it's not about the people? When is it not about the people?
Yeah.
Give me an example, and I would love that debate with somebody, to have that conversation. But at the end of the day,
beautiful.
It's about the people, and it's about relationships, and it's about giving. And you always get more in return when you give. I've never not seen that happen.
It's evident that you are on a really unique journey. I mean, believe me, 10 years ago, if someone would have said to you, hey, you're going to be this life coach, and I guess what I'm excited about being able to work with you and do these episodes is to kind of follow along on this journey. I get to walk through this journey with you and for a while. Tell me a little bit about the life coaching. I think we've touched a little bit on where it all comes from, but tell me how it all came about.
Well, my focus is in multiple different areas, but my primary coaching right now is in executive leadership coaching within organizations. So it's a combination of work-life balance for the individual and bringing leaders to be stronger and more effective in their respective roles within the organization. And then ultimately, I am then doing operational leadership within the organization for systems and processes, and being able to impact bottom line and be the most efficient organization that they can be, and with a primary focus on communication. And just to smile about this, the organization I've been working with for the last 15 months, I was pleased in January when I met with them.
Are you able to say the name of this organization?
Yes, it's Asher College.
Nice, beautiful.
And they have 3 locations in the West Coast, between Sacramento, Dallas, and then Vegas.
Wonderful.
And when I met with the owner in January for a review, I went to the Sacramento campus, and for him to give me the feedback, which I know anybody appreciates in the business world, is you under-promised and you over-delivered. And I said, well, thank you.
That's a beautiful compliment, right?
I said, I'll take it. Thank you. And my greatest reward, and he said, what you do is you come in and you aren't even here, and you are here. And I don't know how to do it any other way. Creating a presence. So my journey has brought me to the ability to just be able to share what I know and build relationships with the people, and to be able to bring them to a point. And my goal is to be a better leader today than they were yesterday, and a better leader tomorrow than they are today, with the focus of knowing that we can all be contributing in such an exponential way when we all build relationships, lead by example, focus on accountability, strive for excellence, accept imperfection, and truly come together with individuals. But the years of experience that I've had in running a business, owning a business, having very difficult years of bottom line situations, and how do you handle the budget, and how do you alter the budget, and where do you cut the costs, and how do you manage keeping your people motivated and inspired to do things when things aren't going well. I ran a school, and we're not, and it's a typical thing in the career school world where it's challenging to keep it profitable. And we did it for 26 years with exceptional outcomes with our students, and the ability to stay in business with a strong ethics and staffing. Those are the lessons in life where you learn how to do more when things aren't going well. And then when things go well, you're like, wow.
So once again, your defining moments are found in things aren't going well. It's a beautiful thing. How did you end up getting to this college? You're from, Beaver County in Western Pennsylvania. And you're, by the way, I love Sacramento. It's one of my favorite places in the world. I have a very good friend that's a glass artist in Chico, so I've spent a lot of time in that area. How did this come about?
Exactly what you said just a short while ago about being charitable. For the last 7 years, I've served on the accrediting body in Washington, D.C. as a commissioner. And I recently, in December, came off the chair role. So, I'm thankful.
Well, let's back up for it. There's probably a lot of people that don't know what the accrediting board is. So can you give us a little definition of what that is?
Yeah, the accrediting body is what schools, and whether they're a national accreditor or a regional accreditor, we're a national accreditor, but educational institutions all over the country, whether they're colleges, universities, career schools, they all have to be accredited. And there are a minimal amount of accrediting agencies that accredit these institutions. So it's basically determining the standards and expectations that an institution has to adhere to in order to be operational and provide services to a student.
So you go in and you look around and you talk.
There's 2 parts to this. One part is the peer-to-peer review, which I've done for over 20 years, peer-to-peer reviews of going in as a management specialist and sizing up an organization in a day and a half as to how are they doing, what are their strengths, what are their weaknesses, writing reports, and then it going back to the accrediting body. Then my other role is as 15 members on a commission, serve on the commission, and we as the commission determine and review those reports and make grant decisions based on those institutions, whether they are eligible to be receiving a grant to offer their accreditation to their students. So
that's a real important place.
Yes, and I went on the commission 7 years ago, and I moved into the executive committee role of 5 individuals in 2013, and I just recently finished a 2-year role as the chair of the commission.
Wow.
And I'm now the past chair, which are
So
big roles.
So you
That's
just keep climbing the ladder.
That's where experience
no
comes
mountain
from.
high enough for this one, I can tell you that.
It's, I'm humbled and honored that I've had the privilege in a lot of situations over the years. And I think when you talk about the experience and you talk about where it's come from, I've gone in on many different roles and been willing to come in at whatever level. I mean, I joke back to people in 1985, I started as the data entry person for DCI Career Institute, and I became an owner by 1991. And I held every position in the organization for over 25 years. That's my style of, I guess, approach to life, of just going in with whatever might happen and just excited to see the opportunities presented and then say yes. And that's one of the statistics out of leadership now that they talk about. The leaders of today aren't coming from the Ivy Leagues. They're coming from the people in the trenches.
You're absolutely right. I mean, we do a series on CEOs and people, and it's just amazing. We worked with the gentleman that's the CEO of Sweetwater. It's the largest audio and video distributor, music distributor, componentries and things. And he was pretty much working out of the back of his van.
Sure.
Okay.
Yes.
Him and his wife, you know,
Yes.
I mean, and today we went to see his campus, and it's just amazing. But he talked about that.
Yes. The greatest lessons.
But again, it was, everybody experiences these terrible, bad things happen to us.
Mm-hmm.
We go through bad times.
Mm-hmm.
It's relative on how we adapt to them.
Yes.
We embrace them.
Yes.
We accept them.
Mm-hmm.
We take accountability for what we need to do. And we do whatever it takes to get the job done. No matter how
right.
minute that job is,
That's right.
we do it with passion. And that's obvious what you're saying. And I love that, because it's the playbook for great leaders. And tell me a little bit about your very first experience when you started life coaching people. I mean, you had to go in there and go, Lord, what am I doing here?
Yes.
Please help me.
Yes. Yes. Absolutely.
And then all of a sudden you realize how qualified you really are,
Yeah.
because
That's exactly right.
You have the war stripes to prove it, right? So
I couldn't have said it better myself. That's exactly what played out.
well,
Yes.
tell me a little bit about that moment, or those moments in those times looking back.
Well, I think what's important to recognize is I realized around 2016 that, and it was leading up to that, really shortly after my husband passed away, that I felt I needed to do something different in life. And I looked, and I didn't know what that was going to be. So we, just started to write some blogs, and my son has had a business for over 10 years at that point. And we began to discuss what was the possibilities of tracks. He had been successful in the different software development. He was working with workflow efficiencies with major clients, Procter & Gamble, and doing his wheelhouse and doing it well, consulting and everything. So he said, Mom, why don't we try to find something for you? And in all honesty, I really said, okay, this could probably be something that would be good. A good little pastime.
I could do on my part-time job, right?
Seriously. I said, this is probably something I could do, because truly I do help individuals on the side too. Just when we talk about life coaching, I've had some beautiful experiences to just help individuals. And I just want to do that to giving back. But as we walked down this journey, I said, that would be great. Let's do it. We talked about it. And he said, okay, I'll get you set up. And, he could do the webpage and get me set up. And, me, for someone who was wanting a low profile, I wasn't really a high profile person. And I joke, and he ends up telling me that my website is called PeggyTiderman.com. And I said, oh, great for a low profile.
Let's just start right off with that.
Straight right off the bat. So we put it out there, and I volunteered. I'll go back to volunteering to do a workshop for one of my individuals who I met through my volunteer services, and said, let me come in and do a workshop for your group, Asher College. They said, okay, come to Vegas. We'll pay your expenses. And I didn't get paid for the day, but I said, that's fine. I'll go volunteer. I went and volunteered, and there were about 15 people in the session, did a full day workshop. And just after, at the end of the day, he said, okay, I'm going to sign up 8 people.
He being the president.
The president.
Okay.
I'm signing up 8 people at the end of the day. And it was one of those moments, oh, so getting on the phone and going, we have to build a contract and we have to, like, we're ready to go. Let's go. Let's do this. And he had experience, of course. My son did. And I had some experience too, that he was able to put something together, and we were able to put the proposal and everything together, and off it went, it started. And then within 6 months, they doubled the amount of people that he had in the leadership coaching program. And then within a month or 2 of that, he added on operational leaderships, that I was not just doing individual leadership coaching with the individuals. He wanted me to fully be a part of the full operations and almost, working with it. And his most recent comment was Chief Communications Officer, which is kind of ironic and funny that someone in Pennsylvania can be the Chief Communications Officer for an organization in Sacramento, Vegas, and Dallas.
I can see you being the chief of organization of communications.
So it just took off, and
that's not surprising.
It just took off. And then, in August, from a volunteer friend, I was sitting at dinner in Washington, D.C. when I was serving on my commission in August. And one of my contacts said, hey, we're doing leadership coaching and we want to bring you into our organization. And it was a government contract. And I thought, okay, that would be beautiful, and I'd love to do that. And knowing what usually timelines are for government contracts, I figured that would take a while. Well, I was on site by October, I think 9th, and we had 10 people, and for 3 months. And in January, we went now to 6 months with 19.
So it's kind of like whitewater rafting in a funny way.
And I've done
how
that.
They start you off and you're just kind of meandering and the sun's burning you. And then all of a sudden they say, okay, well, you better get ready because you're going to go around this corner. And then pretty soon the water's moving and now, okay.
You're going from the 3 class to the 6 class.
Yeah, you're class 5, rapids, whitewater all over. So
yes.
I think it's really unique. Your son sort of ran that parallel a little bit before you. He's a communications tech IT guy that teaches underdeveloped countries on how to code and create websites and things of that nature. And so now you're on this class 5 rapids, and now you two have joined up and sort of created a bigger raft so that he's doing one part of this life coaching in that realm, and you're over here, and now it's kind of molding together in some facets. Tell us a little bit about that. What is the name of your business, and what would you say that would be? What that's going to look like 5-6 years from now?
It's really fascinating because when we were first discussing this, because he comes from the IT, the digital side, which is all the systems and the processes, which, the great question that we ask, what's more important, the people or the systems? And in essence, you have to start with the people, and the people are very critical, but it's the systems and the processes where the exponential growth comes. And so what's fascinating, it's Streamline Digital is the main company name, which then Streamline Coaching has come off as a part of that. So what we've realized, and we just did our first kind of joint session last week.
Where?
They're in Washington, D.C. on a strategic session, a half-day strategic session. And what's interesting is that you'd have to have both of them today. And when we came together to partner up and start to work together, we didn't see the vision to the degree that we see it now, 15 months later, that it's just validated through different conferences and explanations of showing that, wow, today in working with people, at one time they thought systems and technology was going to take over for people. Well, in essence, it is from a robotic tactical standpoint, but not from a strategical standpoint. You will still have to have people in the strategic side. But while it's been projected that 7.5 million jobs will be taken up by 2024 with robotics. There will be another 1.5 billion created for people. And they don't know what those are going to be, but they're because of systems and processes
Just
and
growing
technology
and becoming
people.
more, yeah.
So when you talk about what does that mean, we almost sit back and go, wow, we never even envisioned that he was going through his track. And, you know, when he went to go through the program, which was at the school I was at,
Right.
that he went at when he graduated from high school, that where that was going to take off from 2000 now to be 2019, that him and his mom would be working together through a track and a path that no one would have ever predicted. And just to note, the last 9 years that I was in the school, my daughter worked with me as the director of financial planning and all the financial aid. So I am accustomed to having my children working with me, for me, and around me in very professional settings for many, many years.
I mean, it's almost, I would like to say, boy, you planned that out perfectly, but we both know it's just a developing life journey that we keep talking about today.
It is. Yes, it's all about that.
So since we brought up your daughter, by the way, her son's name's Mark, and your daughter's name?
Julie.
Julie. Where's Julie?
Well, Julie is in San Diego. She actually went to San Diego back in 1999 and lived there for 5 or 6 years. Then she came back, and actually, which is ironic, and when I wasn't at the school, she went to school first. Then they asked me to come back because the other owner was leaving, and the executive director, when I came back after we had sold the school. And she gave me permission to come back and to be the executive director, and said, "We need you, Mom," which is a funny, ironic story, and then I worked for her for 9 years. Well, she knew that they always wanted to go back to California, her and her husband and their daughter. And her daughter graduated from high school last year. It was in November of 2017 that they left Beaver County again and went back to San Diego. She now works for the University of California, San Diego campus in financial aid.
Wow. Okay. Interesting. Do you see them being your daughter and your son and you all working together at some point?
Yes, I do. Because, you know, she brings to the table a very interesting, dynamic part, and she talks about it all the time. And we tell her when we get to a point where we can afford her.
Exactly. Hey, Joey, if you're watching this, keep your price up. They'll find you.
Yes, yes. When we can afford her again, she's definitely, she fits into the plan, very much so, because of what she brings to the table is different and very complementary of what we do in our world, which we're finding that out.
So I'm going to kind of draw it back a little bit now. And when you're doing the, I mean, all these things are unfolding right now, and obviously you're here because your need or want to reach, and your message is needed to be reached by so many people. Tell me what you feel will be the biggest impact of 2019 for you in building relationships. That's a really tough question. I'm sorry. If you want me to re-ask it, I'll ask it in a different way.
Go ahead and ask it in one more way so that I can see both angles, please.
I obviously believe you're a planner, and you would have to be, right?
Not all my parts of my life, as you can tell.
Well, I think you're free enough to understand that your plans have to be set forth, but your faith allows them to alter and change as they need to be. Right. Because we all know that, you know, our life map is constantly changing, as we talked about. And so the first thing, as Dr. Peck talks about in his book, your life map, you always have to find out exactly where you are on the map. And then the second part is you got to determine where you want to go in your life map and then kind of course that out, knowingly that there's going to be a lot of deviations in the way, but at least that will change. And of course, then once that changes, your destination will change, and of course, your position will change in your life. So in 2019, so I'm talking relatively 8 months. You're looking at a circumstance or a place, and I say to you, what relationship or relationships do you see will become the most valuable ones?
Well, first, let me start off by saying, and I truly mean this from the bottom of my heart because it's never done me wrong. Every relationship is important. You just never know which one is the one that changes the trajectory of your life at any given point in time. I have learned that. And I think by living that way, I think that's created a real sense of directional compass for me in life, because I have had such sidebar conversations in airports. I mean, I travel a lot.
Sure.
And my kids joke about that. I have this woman from Connecticut now, and I was on a flight with her from Richmond to LaGuardia to get back to Pittsburgh about a year and a half, 2 years ago. And she and I had this amazing conversation, and it really, by our conversation, made her make a life-changing decision to change. And she still reaches out to me. She just reached out to me 6 weeks ago and wanting to say, hey, can we talk again and connect after a flight? So I honestly say, and I know that she and I, her name's Trish, and I know that she and I will again cross paths in a very unique way that may be in a very life-changing way for what she's doing now in her new career track. So I truly believe that it's a privilege for me, for any person in any professional relationship, any organization that I get to coach and meet with their individuals, and any person that I've met. I mean, just in all honesty, meeting you guys and the connections for you guys. I mean, you just never know what particular relationship that you're going to engage in that is going to change the trajectory of your life. And if you keep that as a real priority in however you interact with people, I'm convinced that there will only be positive things will come from it. Not always what you believe might be the outcome from that situation, but a lot of times the greatest gems come. I've learned that. The greatest experiences and greatest gems have come from me not having a preconceived notion as to what it might be, but just an invested approach to saying, I just want to give what I have and live in the moment and spend time in this relationship.
You then, might I say, believe that you meet people for a reason, and it's God's reason, and whatever you develop out of that is really up to you. I think so many times people forget that there's really not a chance happening, right? No. So many times so many crazy things happen, and you meet someone and you suddenly realize, wow, I can't believe what that person just did, or
yes. Yes.
And I think it's pretty amazing.
Well, I tell people, and one of the things I've learned in my journey, we do not have control over the circumstances that come before us, but we have 100% control over our reaction to every circumstance.
Talk about that a little bit.
I use that, and I know for myself, and that is why, investing in yourself, making sure that you prioritize and position yourself to be in a healthy state of mind, because life is tough. It's a tough journey out there. But when we invest in ourselves and we position ourselves to take on the different changes, challenges, life-altering situations, and we truly are going to hold ourselves accountable, and accountable through a faith-based process for me is very strong, spending time and knowing what that compass is, and just being in the role that I'm in, whatever role it is, whether I'm the parental role or whether I'm in the organizational role, that I'm the head of the organization, or whatever role. When I take on that, and that's where the premise of my leadership coaching comes from, leading by example. If I stop and think about when a circumstance takes place, and I have 100% control over how I react to it, I can tell you it will change the way you react to life, because that is what allows us to know what is the right thing to do. And it does. It's taking a couple of seconds, a couple of moments sometimes, and maybe a day before you react to a situation. And I coach people on that. Not everything in life needs an immediate reaction to
An
it.
impulsive reaction, right?
We just believe
How
it
many
does.
times I tell you, because I'm of Italian descent, right? And I have this impulsive, creative side to me that, I have, over my mature years, learned, and believe me, there's, that wasn't easy. If I could
good.
just hold my breath
Yes.
and just talk to God for a moment, it does change.
It does.
Changes your direction. Talk about paths, right? I want to go back for a second. You said something really interesting. And so you said a healthy state of mind. Yet, so many people say, I want to define this healthy state of mind and expectations. I've found that, when I don't expect something, I think there's a fine line, because I can say with faith that something's going to happen. I truly have faith that it's going to happen. Correct. It's not an expectation, quite frankly. Correct. There's a little bit difference, right? And so I want to talk a little bit about that part of what we just said, or talked about, and the healthy state of mind. Because do you believe there's that correlation?
Oh, yes.
And
yes.
If so, tell me a little bit about that.
Well, and I think it's evident, because of how I've dealt with the challenges that I've recently, particularly over the last 6 years, because if you didn't have that kind of thought process and belief of that, then I don't believe I could have walked the journey the way the Lord has given me the privilege to walk. And it's really been because of that. So that I think statement is sort of validated because of that. But it is so critical. Wow, we do have to have expectations, and I talk about that in leadership and just life and living life through. That goes back to our journey of trust. It's recognizing that our expectations of what we have, if we keep ourselves open, it's just like meeting people. If you seek to understand, a good old Stephen Covey, and it's actually in Proverbs.
Absolutely.
So, giving credit first to Proverbs and then to an author.
And then to Stephen Covey, who ripped it off of Proverbs.
That's right. Still like an artist.
Isn't it beautiful that we learn through different perspectives? Because that's exactly
Correct.
what it is.
It's the platform.
Yeah,
whatever platform that gets the impact. So seeking to understand, if we seek to understand and we truly believe in faith, then that's what allows that to work. Because your expectations are still there that I'm going to get somewhere, but I'm willing to go somewhere different because now I'm seeking to understand and finding out that I need to not go where I originally thought I should have gone. And that's, in my mindset, how things work out. That's also how it's very healthy in business, because that's where people begin to be very innovative, and people then begin to contribute, and the exponential growth, and then the sum is greater than the parts.
That's exactly where I was going with this, because in business, we set these goals.
Yes.
And we started off this whole part of this segment on looking at your 2019 goals, or relationships and goals and relationships. With the expectations, and I'm going to dig a little deeper here, so bear with me here.
Sure.
I'm boring into this. Without being boring, I hope. So the idea of believing that you're going to go somewhere, and how many times has this happened in your life? Mine, probably, I don't know, once a week it seems. I believe I'm going to do something, right? And I end up going over here and doing this. And if I'm open enough to not get frustrated, not and believe that I was supposed to probably be over here helping these people. I was in Atlanta recently, and I had a complication of trying to catch a plane because I left something at the TSA belt. Right?
Oh, great.
I'm at the gate. The plane is here. And the lady's like, you got to get on board. And I realized something has been left. So I run back to TSA, realizing I'm going to miss this flight. And I'm just, just one of those days I'm marking it up to. But as I'm returning, so I joke with the guy about, it was a painting I left there. So that was left there. And as I'm walking down the stairs, the escalator, I got excavator on my mind. Anyway, I'm going down the people mover.
Yes.
And this older lady in front of me falls and face plants on the concrete, right?
See?
And I reached to help her, and miraculously, for some reason, I've been carrying this gob of napkins in my suit jacket pocket that's been bulging it out, and I'm being stepped over by other people who are desperately trying to get to their place. And it suddenly occurred to me I needed to help this woman, right? So it was funny once I accepted now that I was meant to do that. The frustration, the stress, and all the things of being missing that flight, and all the complications that goes on with not your rides and all the other things. When you reach a maturity level in your life as a coach, how do you bring people to that? I mean, because I think the better word for you, I like coaching because I think coach is kind of cool. I've had coaches in my life, and some have been great, and some I really don't know what they're still doing. But I think that my view of you is more mentorship. The ability to mentor a group simultaneously by being able to transition from, I'm going over here, wait a minute, I got to go here now, I think is a real gift. And obviously you possess that. And that's one of the most difficult things to do, particularly in business.
Okay? Fascinating, yes.
I mean, from
I
catching
understand where
a
you're
plane,
coming.
Right. I mean, so, I'm listening to you, I'm reading your things, and I'm like, wow, this is a real gift. Tell me a little bit about that gift.
It's interesting you say that because exactly what you're talking about. Well, I have right now 33 individuals that I'm coaching. They're in 2 different arenas. And one of them is education and one of them is government. And the one thing that we thought in the beginning of this journey that the leadership coaching that I was doing was universal. When we're validating that because it has core components that permit it to be universal. But what I've learned, and again, it goes back to what we talked about earlier about the trenches and about real leaders who have been able to adapt, have been able to go into situations. And I can tell you, and I've had a lot of positions over the years and many different levels that were, I would say 80% of them were newly created positions, which you had to create then. What was the job description and define them?
You're right on a tablet what you think you are.
And I think from early years of being in very difficult, very adaptable situations, flexibility, all the things that people would, try to determine, they knew what that definition was. You really don't until you actually go and really begin to fit into places. But I can tell you too, in the years of doing accreditation business for the last 25 plus years, that has helped because you go in and you get to see organizations and you size them up. So I think it's been exposure to a lot of different business venues over the years. But then when I go back to the core component to seek to understand, and to really get to know people and build relationships, what I found when you build those relationships, people will tell you what you need to know to be able to guide them. It's meeting them where they're at and then taking them where you know they need to go because you have had some experience. I'll also say years of experience and age has a little to do with it.
Yeah, right.
That's when I realized, okay, I am a little bit older here. And now when they bring up this situation and I can relate to a experience, okay, I'm getting a little bit older here, and smiling at that from that. So it's a combination of things. And I do believe it is a talent of being able to handle multiple things at multiple times, which we go back to. I think that was one of the training grounds that helped me to handle 6 years ago.
You mentioned government, and I mean, I'm going to try a very difficult thing not to do, but I every day, I watch, I read, our so-called leaders, which I find it really hard to term them. And I'm not just pointing out one. I'm going to just give it a fine, big, broad brush stroke right across all of them, who obviously have lost touch. I don't know if it's, and I guess I'm so excited to hear that there are people in government today, like you, helping our leaders understand, maybe come back to this real life that we grant them through our tax dollars and those type of things, because I think that even we lose sight that sometimes our leaders in all sects of life, you see it in the churches, you see it in all these things, and yet we forget, the priests are people, the rabbis are people, that our congressmen are human people, okay? They are tempted, they are, they are haunted, they are products of their past, they are products of their current life. And I'm going to go back to this mentorship thing that I believe I have many mentors in my life, and I think that was something very important many years ago, but it seems like it's been lost. Tell me a little bit what you're doing in government. I think that you talk about a vast world that you must be looking around going, whoa, this needs a lot of work here.
Well, it's interesting you say that because, again, for myself going in there, validating that what I believed was a universal approach, which I'm proud to hold on to, I can honestly tell you these people are amazing. These 19 individuals that I'm now working with truly are just like us, and they're doing the things that matter to the public, and they are very concerned about what their role is, some of the boundaries, some of the restrictions that they have because of different regulations and different impacts of doing what they do. But from the true leadership side, when it comes down to the core components of talking about the leading by example, striving for excellence and accepting imperfection, and building a culture of accountability, asking more questions to create relationships, and realizing that sum is greater than the parts. From my ebook, that's one of the things that they really wanted to bring into this group.
That's beautiful, because I think that, I guess where I'm coming from that is, when we realize that they're people, they're human beings, is it really us that tend not to look at them and go, okay, you need some help, man? Instead we chastise them and we throw them out, and and don't get me wrong. I mean, if you're heinous and you do harmful things, sure. I'm not saying, but at the end of the day, it becomes this owning accountability.
Yes.
Okay, not for them, but
Yes.
for us, right? I mean,
Yes.
aren't we, the mass, part of the problem? In one of my lyrics in my song, I write, the chalice goes to the most confused.
Yes.
They are the people that are constantly trying to change our views, right? But isn't it true that if they do change our views, we had to allow them?
We gave them permission.
We gave them permission.
We have a free will on everything we choose.
There you go. And so, how does a person like you that starts to see this, I mean, kind of put your arms around this? And I mean, you know, you look at our society and our losing faith. And we started this episode off with talking about faith and what that faith is. And there's like this couple dual roles of faith, and it's the ability to believe. And if you really do believe, then you have to have hope. And without hope, there's no love, right? But there you are, this life coach, and you see it all. I mean, you know, is it the chicken or is it the egg that goes first here? I mean, and how do you help one side of this equation? And I mean, how does it ever all come into some kind of parity, if you will?
It's a really fascinating thought, and that's a big question.
Yeah,
but
I'm
what I
sure.
can tell you, and it has repeatedly worked, and it, in essence, it really truly has never not worked for me in life, in many different venues, as you can tell, that I've been in over the years and still am in, and some very controversial, very challenging situations that I happen to be the one that gets tapped on the shoulder and says, we need you to take care of that.
That's what I'm saying.
And,
I mean,
I know.
What, don't you go, hey, wait a minute.
I get excited about that.
Obviously.
Because I get an adrenaline high off of that, because I know that if you do show up and you do come to the table, and then it is about putting some very specific stipulations on how you want to have a conversation or how you want to go. There's a great quote that I learned several years ago: what you will tolerate, you cannot change. And it is all about that in life.
Wait a minute. Let's stop with that. That's beautiful. What you tolerate, you cannot change. And that's exactly what I'm talking about in our leadership today, in all sorts. Our leadership, that's the point I was saying. Isn't it, though, that we are tolerant? We get so tolerant, it's terrible. It's really funny. The first time that mass shooting went on, everybody was like, what happened, right? Now it's like, oh, no, another one. Oh, no, another one. What do you mean, oh, no, another one? Aren't we building that tolerance? And so, if we do believe that in order to change, we have to change one by one, not meaning we change our world and the world around us changes, correct?
Correct.
So,
that's why I get to have a job.
There you go. I can see why you're looking at this vast crater over here going, whoa, I'm going to need lots of employees. Please help. No, but, I mean, it's one of the reasons why I'm excited about doing this.
Because you got to believe.
Well, you got to believe, but I
yeah.
think that I believe that more people need to hear your message, because you're a special person to do that. I mean, there's not a lot of people. I'd be like, hey, wait a minute. You know what I mean? I thought we talked about this last week. You know what I mean? This isn't working here. Right. I'm going to try something else.
And sometimes that's what you have to do.
Maybe so. I guess. But Even the Lord did get upset at the temple.
Yes.
So, but I ponder, and I have optimism of that we will change, and we are changing. That's the amazing thing.
Oh, yes.
It's the amazing thing, because I'm hearing it in a lot of terms. You see it in the liberation, and I mean the liberation of men's minds on the perception of life with women, and I was so blessed with a mother and father who loved each other, and my father took me aside and taught me how to love my mother.
Right.
I mean,
Right.
it's a learned behavior,
It
by
is.
the way.
Yes.
The gentleness, the tenderness. This isn't something that you romantically come up with one day. My father was a beautiful individual from that perspective. I mean, I remember he was telling all of us kids, we were 10, and he would be telling us how beautiful women are and how important they are. And he used to quote the Bible a lot. He was very well read, and he should have been a theologian. In so many ways he was. I remember one time he said, he told us about God talking to Abel, and Abel saying, I met this woman with pure white skin and long hair. She's so beautiful. And he said, look, man will never be a whole man until you understand that the rib of that woman will be yours and yours will be hers, and that you will need her in your life to build you to become a man. And conversely to that, the same is in relationships. Right. And that's what we're talking about today.
Correct.
And when you just take those simple things like that, right? And you wonder why we forget those tiny little building blocks. And I see that those are really a woven fabric in a lot of what you write and talk about. Where did that come from?
It's so fascinating that you say that, because I've said that all along, and I say this is a simplistic approach that everyone can do, and everyone has the opportunity. And I think it is from a lot of the things you just described. I was very fortunate, to come from a family unit that was, raised, the youngest of 5. And I can tell you that being the youngest of 5, with my oldest sister being only 7 years older than me, I saw a lot over in the growing up years. And we did a lot of things as families. We were involved in multiple settings where we interacted with many different types of people growing up. So at a very young age, we learned how to accept people differently, interact with people differently, communicate with them, go side by side and work with them, always be willing to volunteer, roll up your sleeves. My dad was a contractor, ran his own business very successfully. And, so, I mean, a lot of things that you grow up with good values. And I think it comes back to values, but values can be learned at any age. And I think that's what people fail to realize. Everyone wants to learn them, and some people have not had the privilege or chance to learn them. And when you do give them that chance, and that's what I find out with working with adults in executive coaching and businesses, is many of them come from multiple different platforms, but they're also yearning, if they've never heard it before, they want it. And I've seen a lot of them over the years, and I had the privilege of working with a lot of different diverse students in my 30 years at the school. They came from so many walks of life, so single parents, they came from multiple house settings. So I didn't necessarily have to live in their shoes, but I walked with them side by side because of that privilege of working in that environment. And that's when I go back to, we all have the chance to understand each other if we just take the time and seek to understand.
That's beautiful.
And when
It
we
really
do
is.
that, and one other thing I wanted to mention, Today, what you see is a lot of people talking about, and this is what I'm learning in the leadership coaching. I'm spending a good bit of time on this, on the Gen Xers, the millennials, the baby boomers, and all the different eras, because that's the challenge now with everybody working together, because we all work differently. And you hear so many different, I hear quite a few people sharing negative thoughts of the young people. And I'm telling you, I am so excited about our younger generation. I am so excited, and I've spent a lot of time just interacting with different people, and there are some great things coming out of them. They have some of the priorities in place that we didn't.
I totally agree with that. And I also think that that's one of the important things about doing these type of programming, is because it reaches a certain level of people or a different type of person than reading.
Yes.
Okay, I mean, you can watch this on your phone, on the bus or subway.
Right.
Okay. Are you doing any type of leadership for children?
I am actually working, I serve on the committee for Young Life. I don't know if you're familiar with Young Life.
I do know the organization.
So I serve on the Young Life Committee here in Beaver
for the
Valley.
people that may not know, can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yes, Young Life is an organization that works within school districts and works within areas and territories, and they're all over the world. They've been around for years. And the goal is to bring the young kids to Christ, to share with them, to have fun. They go out and they enjoy times together. They do athletics. They do fun activities, and really it's about fellowship. It's about relationship building, and then to show them that there is an opportunity for them to build a relationship with Christ through the process. And so I serve on that committee, and that is one of my recent volunteer things that I'm doing and working with. And
I'm sorry I'm laughing, but it's that old adage, if you want something done, ask the busiest person you know, right? So you're volunteering on that too?
Yes.
Okay.
But what I can tell you, just in a piggyback to the different variations of the generations, the reason I believe that we are having a struggle and we're having difficulty is not because of who they are, but it's how they communicate. And it's our unwillingness
to change
as older individuals to choose to communicate. And I use the statement again, it's meeting them where they're at. And because I've learned in that approach to life, when I meet these kids where they're at, you wouldn't believe the things they teach me. I always say, again, if I could give them half of what they give me, and the return, and when you use these different platforms of interaction, you find so many different things out of it. But we have become so, I guess, tainted at not believing to do that first. And then we get our preconceived thought about who they are.
It goes back to what we were talking about earlier, our unwillingness to change as we start to look at our perspective.
Yes.
And that is one of the things I'm reading in your writings about the need for change.
Yes.
Not to change the world.
No.
Just to change a perspective. Maybe change your view of how you react.
That's it.
I think that's really beautiful.
If I can choose, if we choose to do that, it's just an amazing impact on life. I can tell you, at 60 years old, I'm so excited to know what 70 is going to be like. Because if we can truly, as humans, and I believe this is the way it's intended to be, we do gain more experience. We do have more privileges and more opportunities that come through our past. We truly are the vessel to everyone. And it's just like it says in the Bible. On the outside, we may grow up, but on the inside, we're growing new every day.
Let's hope we do. I think that's the key to staying young, right?
It is. And realizing what we have to give back. And I know, because I tell people this all the time, and they'll say, well, I'm a certain age and I can't get a job. And I said, well, I would love to talk to you about that, and I'd love to work with you on that. Let's talk about
Yeah.
how you could change that perspective.
Because it starts right here,
It
right?
starts right here.
Yeah.
I'll go up against any 30, 35-year-old if I'm qualified and meet the expectations, and I'm a competent person to sit in that same seat.
I can't tell you how many times, at least in my life, that I felt like life was just rolling along like I can't believe. And all of a sudden, the change occurs. And I'm like, what? Wait a minute. Why? And the minute I accept it, okay, the minute I go, okay, I haven't gone wrong yet, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
What is it? Where am I going? Go ahead, give it to me.
Let's go.
I'm not afraid. Something, most amazing thing happens. What do you do to help people? I mean, because I'm sitting here telling you, I mean, I try to learn that all the time.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I used to believe bulldogging my way. What do you do? How do you help?
You spend time with them. You make yourself vulnerable. You dare to go out among them and just fellowship with them where they're at, not where you're at.
It's beautiful.
And you truly will find things you will have never found before. It's like a treasure hunt. And to me, it's like so beautiful. It's like, wow, I'm gaining more from this because I never went there before. And this is like, I missed out on so much because I didn't go there. But to spend time, and once you do that...
Is it fear? Do you think it's fear?
I'm confident it's fear, because that's one of the things that I know for myself is diminished because of faith.
Is it an inherited fear? Or is it
Perceived?
Perceived or a developed? Is it it is a voluntary bondage in some way?
I believe that it comes from many different levels. I mean, because fear can be, again, I go back to truly understanding a human being. I'm not going to say for 1 minute that I can understand the trauma of someone from a fear that they've experienced.
Sure.
I would never say that, just like they could not understand my experience totally to the degree that I walked through, which had fear associated with it. So I would never, ever want to be someone to believe that I could do anything like that. Mm-hmm. It's just being able to have great conversations, again, being vulnerable, and just being willing to come to the table and show up and say, and I use these on task force for organizations and leadership coaching. You know, we have a 7-point checklist that we have to be willing to come into the meeting and say, I'm going to be willing to trust. I'm willing to have the discussion in front of everybody. I'm willing to say that I am not going to go out of here and think that I'm going to get the answer at the water cooler when I know I need to get the answer here. Those types of commitments to say, we're coming to this table to advance the mission. And when you do that, it's amazing what discussion points you can have. And that's how you change it, because I think when people start to see that people are really engaged and really want to be a part of that, then they'll feel a difference. You sense it. I mean, our inside changes. We adapt.
Yeah, I have I lost my parents when I was very young. By the time I was 23, I had lost both of my parents. And there was this very deep anger, and there was a fear.
Sure, absolutely.
Fear can be a driving force.
Yes.
Like the fear that you were going to be homeless. And, you know, but now I look back in the fabric that created inside my heart, and the understanding I see in people when they are afraid.
Yes.
Because I know what it is to be really afraid.
Real. That's what I said. It's not real. I would never question that fear isn't real for somebody. But one of the checkpoints, I had a 3-point checklist that came away from after my husband passed away, and I used it on a regular basis. I don't judge, I don't compare, and I don't ask why.
Man, you know what? That was one of the biggest things I challenged myself to probably in the last 10 years is do not judge. Do not compare. If you can take that slice, I mean, just remove it out of your life, because I don't know, it just, you know, it's almost... my main focus in life was in the financial industry. And right from the get-go, you are compared to everybody else by a number.
That's it.
How much did you
right.
produce? You
That's
are,
right.
and so you're totally comparing yourself.
That's right.
So you get in this
Competition.
grind where you're comparing yourself. It was one of the most difficult things for me to remove out of my life, is not to look at someone else and try and compare myself. It was one of the things that actually brought me closer, to Christ, because I realized that there is no two people. There is
unique.
no one alike, right?
You're one.
The minute you get that part,
You're one.
and you remove yourself from that, well, I'm looking at this person and I want to know about this person, instead of looking at where you're at and doing as much as you can for whatever you're doing right there. And that changed my life so much. I mean, there's been a lot of things that have changed my life, okay? And again, we're going back into this openness to change. But I think it's fascinating what you're doing. I really do, Peggy. You're really an amazing woman, and I'm not saying that because you're here with me. I'm excited about these, and I don't even know how much time we've been on this air, but I'm sure everyone's going okay. but we're probably going to have to take it down from now. But so if people want to get a hold of you, someone needs help, someone's reaching out and wants to reach out to you, how do they do it?
They can actually go to the website at www.peggytiderman.com, and they can certainly recommend that they download the ebook, and they can reach me it's just at peggytiderman.com.
And that, for anybody who might not know, the spelling is Tiderman.
And one of the things I'd like to just share, just one other final quote that was a great quote that was shared recently about leadership in organizations, and I think it really hits the nail on the head from what you just shared about that competition and what we learn and how we have to be on point. There was a great quote, and it came from the automobile industry individual who quoted it, and he said, "We have to unlearn management and relearn human behavior."
That's a beautiful thing. That's a beautiful quote. Can you say that again, please?
Yes, we have to unlearn management and relearn human behavior. And that's why I go back to, I think that's why leadership is in such a need for all of us to figure out how to do this, because we need to relearn the human behavior side of us and the importance of it. And learn how it works together with systems and processes and technology that we once believed was going to take over the world and leave us behind. And as I shared earlier, it's not going to leave us behind. It's just going to change how we come and work in a good way. That we have to come and show up differently, and be more strategic and be more committed and have more of the grit and
more opportunity,
and be really empathetic.
But with that, you have to change
communications. But you've got to change, and you have to be willing to say, "I believe it starts with me before it starts with them."
I love it. I have so many more things I want to talk to you about, and I know we have to close it down. But I really want to thank you for coming on the show.
Welcome. Thank you.
It's been fabulous. And I really look forward to doing this again.
All right. Thank you very much. I
Thank
appreciate
you.
the opportunity. Thank you for taking the time and caring about leadership and where it's at in this country, because there's statistical data that there's an 86% deficit need of organizations. And there's a lot of good opportunities out there for people and organizations to really enhance what they're doing.
I can't even tell you how much I appreciate that statement, and I want to. Hopefully, in our next show, we'll lead off with the definition of human behavior. Okay, because that'll probably consume a whole show anyway. But we pretty much shut the show down. So, but we're going to keep rolling here for a moment. Jeff Bezos runs one of the largest company in the world. Talk about human behavior, has an affair on his wife. And, you know, I was pretty upset because there's another one of our leaders who has human traits, okay, which we can't believe, right?
Right.
But I think what shocked me even more was when pictures of him were found by his brother-in-law or somebody, who cares? And now he's suing the people because he's making it out that they were blackmailing him. And I couldn't help but think how much holding that guy needs right now to express to him, do you have any idea what you're doing to your wife? And all these news shows have this girl that he's had the affair with on, you know, in the bathing suit, getting pictures, and she's being lifted. There goes the chalice being handed off to her, and he, all he needed to do was come on and say, I was really, really bad. I'm sorry. I'm gonna take this up, and I'm human.
Right.
I made a bad judgment. I get it. You don't even need to tell me that.
Right.
But, you know, I think what I really needed to see was him saying something apologetic to his wife. That's all we really would have needed.
Well, and that's even a big deal in the business place and in leadership and everything. It's about
Accountability,
leaders. Well, and accountability, admitting when you're wrong, admitting you don't have all the answers.
Right.
I mean, that's because no one does. And so it doesn't matter where you're at what level, and whatever you've done. And yes, you're vulnerable. You're going to screw up.
Yeah.
You're human, but taking ownership. Ownership is a big deal.
Yeah.
You know, people can accept mistakes because we're all going to make mistakes.
Sure.
It's what do you do with that mistake once you've made it?
Yeah.
That's what matters. It's what's done.
What's the
after.
statement? It's not what you've done. It's how you take what you've done and move on with it.
Yes.
Is how people really judge you.
Well, that's
right?
it. I've always said that. Yeah, you know, it's not the circumstance. It's how I react to the circumstance
There
or
you
the
go.
situation and respond. It's really up to my behavior and my response.
Again, thank you, Peggy Tiderman,
You're welcome.
and I enjoyed this immensely.
And I did too. It was good. Thank you.